who's up next? Well, that's what I'm here to discuss. I'll be talking about the top 10 best MMA prospects in 2024. These are fighters that I believe have the highest potential to be champions or highly ranked contenders in the future. And in order to qualify as a prospect, you cannot have a ranked win, so none of these fighters are ranked, and you cannot have more than 3 UFC fights. Now, as far as my top 10 ranking system goes, I will be ranking these fighters based on who has the highest ceiling in regards to competition. This is not based on star power, who has the biggest personality, although some of these fighters definitely are marketable in that sense, but I'm really going to be discussing skill sets first and foremost. And before we get into it, I just want to stress once again that you got to be keeping your eye on these fighters in this video, because some of these guys could have championship rises. Some of these fighters really could be the next big thing, and you want to be right there witnessing their journey. So without further ado, let's get into this and let's rank the top 10 best prospects in MMA in 2024. Coming in at number 10, fighting out of Memphis, Tennessee, left hand to God, Danny Barlow. One of the nastiest southpaw strikers in the welterweight division right now. He is undefeated, 8-0, and has won his UFC debut by a vicious third-round TKO. Now, what is there to look for in Danny Barlow? Well, he's a dynamic striker, 6'2" with a 79-inch reach in the welterweight division, which is a pretty crazy reach for welterweight, and his speed is really the thing that is going to separate him from the rest of the pack. Just one of the fastest prospects I've seen, and welterweight, a division that is notorious for lots of wrestlers and grapplers. I think he's going to be a serious threat for anyone on the feet. And, 8-0, doesn't have a lot of experience, but nonetheless, he's been looking pretty dominant so far, has yet to have anyone test him, and Josh Quinlan, a pretty tough opponent to face. He made him look like light work, just lit him up and absolutely mopped the floor with him. So make sure to keep an eye out on Danny Barlow. I think this guy is going to be one of the most exciting strikers at welterweight. And yeah, undefeated prospect. I think he's going to be undefeated for some time, but there are still some questions that need to be answered when it comes to his grappling. So we'll see if he can pass those tests, but let's get on to the next prospect. The number 9 best prospect in MMA is Kevin Jousset, fighting out of City Kickboxing in New Zealand. He's training with Adesanya. He is training with Coach Eugene Berman, but he is originally from France. He's currently 2-0 in the UFC with an overall record of 10-2. One of his losses is to Jack Della Maddalena via a doctor stoppage. I guess there was a cut that he had picked up in that fight, but no shame in losing to JDM. That's one of the best fighters in the welterweight division right now. The best way I can describe Kevin Jousset's game is to say he's a bit more of a well-rounded Israel Adesanya, right? He's a good kickboxer, but his original martial art is judo. He is a judo black belt. He competed growing up in that sport, and he even has a pretty good submission game that he showed in his UFC debut against Kiefer Crosby, who was another hyped up prospect from Ireland, who was, being talked about as a guy that had a lot of power in his hands. Kevin Jousset beat that guy up, took him down, and within a matter of seconds had locked in a rear naked choke. So this guy has good grappling. He's got a submission game, but in his next fight against Song Kanan, that is really where he started looking like Izzy. Adesanya and Kevin Jousset have the same sort of feint game, always feinting, and, similar to Adesanya, he's not a one-punch KO guy, but he is very precise. He has great straight shots, he has pretty good kicks, and he always has the grappling to fall back on. And beating a guy like Song Kanan, a crafty veteran, the way he beat him, I think he held him to like 50 strikes, and I think he landed 115 or something like that. There was a huge striking differential in that fight, which was very impressive. And this is just another guy to keep your eye out on. He is 31 years old. Again, 2-0 in the UFC. I think he has a lot of potential. So I'm going to put him in the number 9 spot, and let's get on to the next one. The 8th best prospect in MMA, fighting out of Myanmar, but training in the US, is Joshua Van. Only 22 years old with a record of 10-1, but he's 3-0 in the UFC. And I had this guy in my best prospects video last year when he was 1-0. He had just gotten a win over the crafty Zalgas Zumagulov, who was a UFC vet. Very impressive win. He was only 21 at the time. Since then, he's gone 2-0, and he's 3-0 overall in the UFC, and he's fighting one of the best prospects in MMA next, Tatsudo Taira, who won't be in this video because he's had too many fights in the UFC, and I believe he may even be ranked. But either way, the best way for me to describe Joshua Van's style is, I mean, his nickname says it all, the Fearless. This guy is a heavy pressure volume striker who doesn't know how to take a back step, and he has, in my opinion, a very similar style to Max Holloway. And I know some people are going to say that that's a crazy comparison, but I really am reminded of Max Holloway when I'm watching Joshua Van. The volume, the shot selection, the kicks. I mean, he's got great front kicks. He's got really good sneaky head kicks, and he's got some of the best combinations to the body in MMA right now. And I believe he's even out here breaking strike records. He broke a record for the most body shots landed in a fight ever, or maybe it was a flyweight fight, but either way, he broke some kind of a body shot record in his second UFC fight against Kevin Borjas, landing 27 strikes in the second round of that fight, almost 20 strikes in the third round. So, I mean, Joshua Van's shot selection, his body shots are nasty, and he just picked up his first ever finish in the UFC, a TKO in his last outing. He's got a lot of momentum, and like Max, he also has really good takedown defense. I think he has yet to be taken down in the UFC, and he's stuffed a lot of takedowns, and he's even showcased an ability to take people down as well. The only thing that Joshua Van is lacking right now is size. He's 5'5", he has a 65-inch reach, and he's been smaller than every single one of his opponents, which is a little bit worrisome considering he's a flyweight and he can't just drop down into a lower weight class. But because he's only 22, he's going to have a lot of time to grow into the flyweight frame the longer he does strength and conditioning, and I believe that with time he'll definitely be a little bit bigger for the weight class. But that is kind of the only thing that is a little bit worrisome. He doesn't have crazy one-shot power either way, so it's going to take him, a lot of effort to get in on the inside of some of the top guys. But if his takedown defense can hold up against Tatsudo Taira in his next outing, which will be at UFC 302 in 2 weeks, then honestly, the sky is the limit for this guy. But right now, I think that for sure Joshua Van is going to be, in 5 years' time, when this guy's like 27, he's going to be a top 10 ranked guy, 100%. Because he's only been training in MMA for a few years. So, I mean, if this guy's only been doing MMA for 4 years or something like that, just imagine how good he'll be with another 5 if he's already beaten the shit out of people in the UFC. So either way, Joshua Van, in my opinion, is the 8th best prospect in mixed martial arts, some of the cleanest boxing in one of the toughest divisions right now. So keep an eye out on him. He'll be fighting Tatsudo Taira, who's a great grappler, in 2 weeks. Let's get on to the next one. Next up, we have the 7th best prospect in MMA, the Brazilian McGregor, or as he calls himself, One Shot, Mauricio Ruffy, coming from Brazil in the lightweight division, 5'11", a 75-inch reach, which is a really good build for lightweight. Why do I call this guy the Brazilian McGregor? Well, first of all, he looks like him. He looks like a hungry Conor when Conor was a featherweight. But even more so, he reminds me of Conor McGregor with his step-back counter strikes, and he landed those all day on Jamie Mullarkey in his UFC debut a week and a half ago. And sometimes you just know with the eye test that we have a special striker on our hands. Before he fought Jamie Mullarkey, I was saying this guy kind of reminds me of Raymond Daniels, who is the, flashy kickboxer that's fought in Bellator and has had a million viral KOs with spinning attacks and all that stuff. But Mauricio Ruffy went out there in front of Jamie Mullarkey, composed, picking his shots, and just finding the beautiful counter step back right hands that made me think of McGregor. So honestly, I'm putting him on the list. All right. The eye test alone tells me that this guy is going to be an absolute nightmare in the lightweight division. He's 5'11" with a 75-inch reach, which is a very good build for lightweight. He's extremely fast. And, you know, outside of the counter striking, this guy also has good takedown defense. He even beat Islam Makhachev's training partner. I forget what his last name is or what his name is, but he beat him on the Dana White Contender Series. He stuffed every single one of his takedowns as well. And if you combine the spinning attacks that this guy has, if you combine the composure that he showed in his last outing against Jamie Mullarkey, where he just cruised to an easy first round KO, and the counter striking that he has, the step back counter right, I think that this guy for sure is going to be making the rankings in the future. And if he has good grappling, I think the sky is the limit for Mauricio Ruffy. But definitely check this guy's fight style out. Make sure to tune into his next one, because he has one of the most electric and entertaining striking styles I've seen from any of these prospects. The number 6 best prospect in mixed martial arts right now is Mingyang Zhang, fighting from China, also named the Mountain Tiger. He trains in the US, though. I believe he trains with Sean Strickland. And you look at his record, it's not that good. He's got a record of 17-6, but he hasn't lost in like 4 or 5 years. This guy's last loss is when he was like 20 or 21 years old. He's only 25 now, and he's got crazy power in the light heavyweight division, coming off of a big KO win over Brenderson Ribeiro, who was a scary guy off of the Contender Series. Kind of looks like Alex Pereira a little bit. And he torched Brenderson Ribeiro, got through the long reach of Ribeiro and knocked his ass out. And the thing I like from Mingyang Zhang is the ability that this guy has to impose his will. He gets in on the inside of people. He trusts in his basic boxing and his chin. He's got a granite chin, and he's also got, as I said, really good basic boxing. He's pushing forward constantly, and he's able to find the shots that he needs in the pocket. And in the light heavyweight division, there's not many guys that have good boxing, to be honest. I mean, a lot of guys have shitty boxing in the rankings. And I think that Mingyang Zhang, with a good chin, with an ability to push the pace and impose his will, is going to find a lot of KOs in this division. I believe he's on like an 8 or 9 fight KO streak right now, which is excellent. Again, only 25 years old, 6'2", 75-inch reach. I think he's got a serious future in the light heavyweight division. I don't know if he's going to be a champ, but I do believe that he will be ranked someday. So that is the 6th best prospect in MMA right now, Mingyang Zhang. On to the number 5 best prospect in mixed martial arts right now, Charlie Campbell, the Cannibal, fighting out of the US with a record of 9-2. He is in the lightweight division. How do I describe Charlie Campbell's style? I think this might be the most well-rounded fighter on this list, except for maybe one that we'll get onto in the future. But either way, Charlie Campbell has some of the cleanest, most aesthetic-looking boxing I've seen in a long time. He had a fight with Dominic Reyes' brother in his UFC debut, and he torched him, he brutalized him, and just pieced him up. It's one of the best boxing showcases in anyone's UFC debut that I've ever seen. And he lost on the Dana White Contender Series. He got knocked out by Chris Duncan. Pretty crazy KO, but he was winning that fight. He was whooping up Duncan on the feet. Maybe he doesn't have the craziest chin, but he just got caught with one big shot. That happens sometimes. But other than that, he's been utterly dominant in basically most of his fights. His last fight with Trevor Peek, fan favorite, another prospect, Trevor Peek, you know, Mr. Hammer Fists on the feet, just a crazy style, granite chin as well. Charlie Campbell had a perfect performance for a prospect against Trevor Peek. It wasn't the most dominant, but it was about the most well-rounded and high fight IQ, and he also just showed a really good ability to overcome adversity, right? Just a really smart game plan and just showcased a lot of different tools he had in his tool bag. Because not only did he outstrike Trevor Peek and beat him up early, he was landing vicious low kicks. Right off the bat, Charlie Campbell's got amazing low kicks. He was piecing him up with the hands. He's got great boxing. And when Trevor Peek started to get some momentum in the second round and he started eating some of the shots of Charlie Campbell, not getting deterred and just kind of pushing forward and trying to slug big punches and big meaty hooks, Charlie Campbell was able to get the fight to the ground. And as soon as he got the fight to the ground, he started to dominate Trevor Peek. And Trevor Peek, in his fight before that, was beating someone on the ground, was taking someone to the ground. Charlie Campbell completely rolled over Trevor Peek, was taking his back, was beating him up, was taking him down consistently, and basically took every single one of the rounds against Trevor Peek in that fight. Things got a little bit hairy at times, but because he showcased the ability to mix in the takedowns, and because he did so well with it and was actively grappling, like showcasing that he was 5 steps ahead of a dangerous guy like Trevor Peek, I think that Charlie Campbell is one of the most promising prospects right now. The boxing is probably what he does best, but that grappling is very good. And the gas tank that he was able to use to keep up with Trevor Peek's insane pace was also really promising. So I'm liking Charlie Campbell. 2-0 in the UFC, a hard-fought win over Trevor Peek, showcasing his well-rounded skill set, a dominant boxing showcase against Dominic Reyes' brother. I do believe he's only 28 years old, that we are going to see Charlie Campbell get into the rankings someday. And I think that, this guy is going to be a fan favorite as more people get to know him. So keep an eye out on Charlie Campbell, one of the most well-rounded fighters on this list. Just an overall solid MMA fighter that, in my opinion, will be elite in the future. Number 4, we have Shara Magomedov, okay? This guy kicks like a boxer boxes. And I'm not just saying he's a kickboxer. I'm saying this guy throws roundhouse kicks like they're jabs. The dexterity that this guy has is insane. Fighting out of Russia, of course. His nickname is the Bullet. Some people call him the Pirate. One of the few OV or EV guys, right, that has like a predominantly striking style. And I think that the UFC is going to push this guy, and we're going to see him with the right matchups get put into big fights. And I also think that people were overly critical of his UFC debut against Bruno Silva. I mean, let's talk about Bruno Silva. He gave Alex Pereira a tougher fight than he gave Shara Magomedov on the feet. It was much more competitive between him and Alex on the feet than it was with Shara Magomedov, who just torched him, beat the shit out of him, made it look easy. Yeah, he got taken down, but Alex got taken down in his UFC debut as well against Andreas Michailidis. All right, now, the point that I'm trying to make is, Shara, I'm not saying he's the next Poatan. I'm not saying he's going to be a champ. What I am saying is that he's only 29 and he has a Muay Thai background. I think this guy has it in him to be able to improve, to work on his takedown defense. Now, fair enough, he doesn't have the left hook of doom, but he has a lot of KOs on his record. And I think that as his takedown defense and grappling improves, which it will, that'll open up more opportunities on the feet, and we'll start seeing this guy lay people out. All right, I think he has a very fan-friendly style. We're going to see a lot of highlight reel moments from him throughout his career. And as I said, the UFC probably wants to push this guy. He already has a big following. He's got a big fan base. He's been in some controversial things, right? I mean, he's gotten into some fights and beat people up in public, and people don't like him for that reason. And so that's also going to get people to want to see this guy lose. But the UFC, I believe, is going to push him, all right? Because he has a fan-friendly style. He is perfect for being on a main card in Abu Dhabi or Saudi Arabia. And I think that they're also going to give him the right matchup. So I could just see Shara Magomedov being given like someone in the rankings after one more win. And you think about the middleweight division, there aren't that many truly elite strikers at middleweight right now. I think that Shara Magomedov is probably already a top 10 striker in this division. Does that mean he's a top 10 fighter? No, not necessarily, but his striking, I think it's at that high level. It's just he needs a little bit more time, and I think he will improve. So Shara Magomedov is my 4th best prospect in the UFC. The number 3 best prospect in mixed martial arts is Payton Talbott, fighting out of the US Some people like to call him the real Sean O'Malley because, well, quite frankly, when people thought about Sean O'Malley back in the day, this is basically what we were thinking of. This is what we were expecting, and Payton Talbott is kind of delivering. So Payton Talbott, how do I describe his style? Because he just had one of the most impressive prospect wins you could possibly get. He was booked up against Cameron Simon, who I had on my last Best Prospects video. Cameron Simon, I believe, was 3-0 in the UFC at the time. Well-rounded, fighting out of South Africa, training with Dricus du Plessis, good grappler, good striker, and Payton Talbott just straight up butchered him. I think he dropped him 3 times and kind of just mogged him. And if you look at Payton Talbott's record, damn near 100% finish rate. He's walking people down. He's marching people down. He doesn't have the same flashy striking as Sean O'Malley, but he has a very free-flowing striking where it's kind of hard to pick up on what exactly he's going to do. I just think naturally this guy has finesse on the feet. Like, he can just find shots that other people wouldn't be able to find. He's accurate, he's powerful, and he walks people down, bites down on the mouthpiece, and just kind of grits through people and tries to break them. So, entertaining style, 100%. I think he has one of the most entertaining styles on this list. If not, probably the most entertaining style on this list. And he's got the aura. I think that the UFC is going to catch on to this guy. They just booked a fight with him on International Fight Week, which is, something that they were doing back in the day for O'Malley. They would put O'Malley on the McGregor cards. Now Payton Talbott is going to be on a McGregor card. Again, the people are calling this kid Sean O'Malley, the real Sean O'Malley. And I could see a future fight between these guys. And I think that with a win at International Fight Week, which he'll most likely get, and he'll most likely blow up from that because he won't be fighting at the Apex this time, I think the UFC is going to catch on and start pushing this kid quite a bit. So Payton Talbott, expect to see this guy blow up. He has the aura. He has the look. As I said, he looks like a beige O'Malley. And he also just has the fight style. And I could just see this guy eventually getting through the bantamweight division, breaking people, finishing people. Sometimes someone just has that thing, and Payton Talbott, he's got that thing. And I think he's going to catapult himself up into the rankings. And don't be surprised if we see this guy turn into one of the bigger stars of the sport. So I'm going to put Payton Talbott in the 3 spot because I really do believe his ceiling is high. I think his marketability is there, marketability. And I also just think that this guy's striking is really dangerous. And it's going to be easy for people to underestimate him because, like O'Malley, he doesn't look that scary, but he proves otherwise in the cage. So this is my number 3 best prospect in mixed martial art, the real O'Malley. The second best prospect in mixed martial arts right now is Bo Nickal. That's right, the Iowa Beaver. Bo Nickal, with his multiple championship wins in NCAA Division I wrestling, he's coming into MMA with one of the highest calibers of wrestling that you could possibly imagine. And there are high-level wrestlers that get into the UFC that can't really submit people or hurt people on the ground. Bo Nickal is already showing an ability to get submissions. He's already showing an ability to control people and keep them on the ground. Now, granted, he's not faced great competition, but he's only 6-0. He's only been training in MMA for like 3 years right now, maybe even less. And I think that he's going to get a lot better. But people act like he didn't just dominate his last opponent. For sure, he was supposed to finish that guy in 1 minute, but he still held him down. He got hit once? And he got one of his takedowns briefly stuffed and then immediately got one right after. Bo Nickal still held this guy down in Cody Brundage and still mauled him and submitted him with ease in the second round. Cody Brundage's victory was literally just surviving until the second. Bo is good. He's got a good submission game. As I said, there are wrestlers like Henry Cejudo. How many submissions does Henry Cejudo even have? And I'm not comparing the two, but I'm just saying he's already showing signs of being able to finish people and hold them on the ground with his grappling, which is really good. He also has knockout power. We've seen that on the Contender Series. We saw that against Val Woodburn. His striking, that is, it's starting to look a little bit hairy, but if he can continue to work on that, if he can also continue to make his grappling work, because, I think this guy could probably take anyone down that he wants, that's also going to open up moments and opportunities on the feet. And as I said, if he has power, he's going to be able to knock people out in the future. But 6-0, probably the least experienced guy on this list, 28 years old. You have to think that the UFC is also going to be giving him the right matchups, favorable matchups, and that they're going to be pushing him so that in order for him to get up there in the rankings, he's going to be facing the right guys. And so I think that based on that, he is very likely to get to the rankings eventually. And I think with a couple more years, if his striking starts to click, I think we could see Bo Nickal even make a championship run. All right, I know he's not been as dominant as fans would have liked against Cody Brundage, but he still finished him easily, and 99% of that fight was total domination. All right, he had 2 very quick and easy finishes in his first 2 UFC fights. So I got to put Bo Nickal up here. I still believe that he has an opportunity to one day become a UFC champion and to become one of the bigger stars in the US for mixed martial artists. So I'm going to put Bo Nickal at my number 2 spot. The number 1 best prospect in mixed martial arts right now is Myktybek Orolbai. That's right. I think this guy from the Ice Ages, straight out of Kyrgyzstan, by the way, shout out to Kyrgyzstan, they may have a future champ. All right. Myktybek Orolbai is probably the guy with the best resume on this list right now. He has 2 wins in the UFC. And for someone that is a prospect that just now got onto the scene, I don't remember when his UFC debut was, but it wasn't more than 6 months ago. I mean, a win over Uros Medic, who was a solid lightweight, now a really dangerous welterweight, on short notice, who he went out there and submitted in the second round, and then a win over Elvis Brenner, who beat the hardcore fans' dream, Guram Kutuledzhi. Everyone was hyping up Guram. Elvis Brenner destroyed Guram. I mean, it was a close fight, but he knocked him out in the third round and kind of broke him. For Myktybek Orolbai to beat Uros Medic and then Elvis Brenner, the Guram Slayer, and Elvis Brenner had a win over Zubaida Tukagov. He had a knockout before that. He was 3-0. He was one of the best prospects. Myktybek Orolbai beat him easily. Up until the third round, he slowed down. There are some issues with the gas tank, 100%. But this guy's already showcasing an incredibly well-rounded game. And you look at his striking, it's solid, man. I mean, this guy has a piston-like jab. He's got good power. He's got a 74-inch reach, which is solid for his build and his height at the lightweight division. And I think he's powerful and fast enough to be able to stand with a lot of guys in the lightweight division, mixed in with the threat of the takedown, and how good this guy is with his accuracy when it comes to taking people down, which is damn near 100%. I mean, Myktybek Orolbai is an absolute nightmare. He's got a great submission game. He's got speed on the feet. He's got a long reach. He's got power. He's got good shot selection. If he could just reel himself in a little bit and be a little bit more efficient with the way that he expends his energy, I really do think that this guy has potential to eventually get up there and maybe even contend for a belt in the future. Because yes, he arguably was losing the last round to Elvis Brenner, but he knocked him down in that round, which basically gave him the round. And the first 2 rounds were utter dominance. Elvis Brenner is not some easy guy to toss around. I mean, he was stuffing a lot of Guram's takedowns, and Myktybek Orolbai was ragdolling him. So I just think that this guy right now with the best resume out of anyone on this list, 2-0 in the UFC, 2 quality wins, an extremely well-rounded game, and he's marketable because, number one, I think he has a pretty fun style, but he's going to remind a lot of people, including myself, of Shavkat Rakhmonov. For sure, they're not from the same place, Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, but they're kind of close. And he is probably one of the only UFC fighters to ever fight out of the Ice Age. I mean, you got to give him that. This guy has basically been thawed from a block of ice after 10,000 years. And you got to give him some credit for at least showcasing that longevity. So all jokes aside, he literally looks like he's from the Ice Age. And I think he should consider changing, or not changing his name, but like coming up with a nickname to play off of that. But either way, Myktybek Orolbai is my number 1 prospect in mixed martial arts right now. I thought about maybe Bo Nickal, but then again, I was thinking, man, Myktybek Orolbai has beaten Elvis Brunner and he has beaten Uros Medic. He's 2-0. He's only 26. He's younger than Bo Nickal. For sure, he doesn't have as much experience, but like, he's just better. He's better right now. So I'm putting him at the number 1 spot. But that is it for the top 10 best prospects in MMA. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. For honorable mentions, I'm going to put up Dembo Grimbo, Bogdan Guskov, Morgan Chetier, and Marcus McGee. These are the 4 honorable mentions that didn't make the list. Marcus McGee is like 34 years old, so I don't know how far he's going to go in the UFC. Bogdan Guskov, Dembo Grimbo, 2 fighters. You know, Bogdan, some people say he's Smith on paper, and then some people say that Dembo Grimbo's got more finesse than a finesser. And either way, we understand how good Dembo Grimbo's story is as well. He's got a very motivational story and a fun style. He'll be fighting this weekend. I'll be rooting for him. We also had, as I said, Morgan Chetier, who is a really well-rounded UFC featherweight with great grappling skill. These are the guys that just barely missed the cut. But let me know in the comments what you think. Do you disagree with any of these placements? And who is your best prospect in the UFC or MMA in general right now? Until next time.